What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview slash prediction video, and today we are here to dive into the battle of the heavyweights in the NFC North. It's 6 win teams in Lambeau Field for first place as of now in the NFC North. It's Lions, it's Packers, so let's get it started. Beginning of the season, you're like, all right, we don't have much film on the other team, so how's this actually going to shake out? And then as the season rolls along, you start getting all these injuries on both sides, and you're like, okay, well, how is this going to change the approach? Because you know it will, especially when you get these injuries at key positions. And all week this week, it was about, hey, is Jordan Love going to play? Well, it sounds like today he is likely to go against the Lions. Now, who knows? Maybe we'll have to see Malik Willis at some point in this game, but Jordan Love is expected to play in a game that is expected to be full with rain showers. That's right. Sounds like 90% chance that after 7 a.m., there's going to be some rain. And by the time it's Sunday night in Green Bay, there's going to be some rain. So expect rain in this game, which usually makes you think like, okay, there's going to be some running the football. And I expect that that's going to be a part of this game anyway for both sides. Both teams would love to run the football in this one, though Josh Jacobs is questionable. It does sound like he is going to play in this game. This would have sounded like early in the week, questionable designations, which could shake this a ton. We know Braddock Martin is out for this game, though he has started his 21-day window. However, according to Dan Campbell, it sounds like this is absolutely going to be a 3-week process for Braddock Martin, and then we'll just see where it's at after that. Josh Paschal is also out with illness. This is a tough one to lose in a game that these edge defenders are really going to have to step up. We're going to need these guys in this game against Zach Tom and against Rasheed Walker. Guys that have been a little bit shaky so far this season against the run, especially with all the receiver runs and all the outside runs that they use and all the misdirection. These edge defenders have to be incredible in this game, discipline-wise, and to not have really our top edge rushers across the board stinks in this one. And then also for the Lions side of things, no Malcolm Rodriguez, so lacking a little bit of depth there. No Sione Vaki, which is incredibly valuable on special teams, or it doesn't sound like he's going to play. He's listed as doubtful. And then Mekhi Wingo is also listed as doubtful. So again, just going into the depth of this defensive line here, we're looking at guys like Trevor Nowaski on the line of scrimmage that need to step up for us in this game. I'm also looking at Levi, who's going to be in the action a ton in this game. You also have guys like Muhammad, who played really well last week, that are going to be huge in this one as well. With some of that lack of depth for us, we'll see a guy like Pat O'Connor once again in this game, who is on the 53-man roster. Now, on the Packers side of things, they definitely have some major injuries. We know that Jordan Love is expected to play, so we'll preview this as if Jordan Love is going to play. However, there's a couple big ones to look at here. First off, safety Evan Williams is not going to go in this game, which is big. I expect to see some Carrington Valentine and not just simply that they go with Eric Stokes primarily in this game. What this does without Evan Williams, it changes their defense completely, because typically they go to Javon Bullard at safety, and last time we saw Javon Bullard at safety against Jacksonville, it looked very shaky for Javon Bullard anytime he was thrown into the action. Though he is very good run support, Evan Williams has been great for them. Instead of the guy that gets all the attention that continues to take the football away so far this season, Xavier McKinney, who has 5 interceptions. But Evan Williams has been a dog against the run. He's aggressive downhill. He's really good in those shell coverage looks. Having him in this game puts Javon Bullard at safety, but that ultimately takes him out of the cornerback responsibilities, which then means when you go to 3 receivers, you're going to push a guy like Nixon inside, because when you go base personnel offensively, you go 2 tight ends. Nixon now will play outside, who's typically their slot cornerback. However, when you put 3+ receivers on the field, now Nixon kicks inside, and they would typically go to Eric Stokes, but he struggled. So in turn, they may use some more Carrington Valentine. It sounds like we may get a rotation between those 2 guys. That is a big injury for the Green Bay Packers. I thought he was going to play early in this week. That's a tough one to lose. Also, we still have to keep an eye on Jair Alexander, because he is questionable in this game. That is their best cornerback. I think there's ways to attack him, but he is their best cornerback on the outside by far. He's their most proven. Him being questionable, big one to keep an eye on. And then Corey Ballantyne, who they're also getting back, is also questionable in this game. The other one that does not seem like he's going to play, he's doubtful, is their center Josh Myers, which last time we saw him miss, they kicked in Elton Jenkins to that center position, and then all of a sudden we see the rookie Jordan Morgan step in at guard for them. Now, if that is the case, and that's how they go about this, if Josh Myers can't go, you have to focus on that guard position, because it is definitely shaky at that point. We've already seen rotation between Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan at right guard, but without having their center and Morgan having to be a full-time starter, that is a pretty shaky guard position, especially for their run game. And that is where, if you're looking at, hey, we are banged up on the edge defender position, they have 2 good tackles playing in this one, they should be playing. And for the Lions, where's their advantage on the defensive line? It is clearly the interior. Those guys need to do some work into this game. This is the game where you shine, the interior of that defensive line. We need those guys to be big time, and I honestly expect that to be the case in this game. So that's a quick little rundown of the injury report. Now, let's waste no more time. Let's dive into this thing. Packers offense, Packers defense. Let's start with the Packers defensively for no particular reason, and then we'll dive into their offense and what I expect. Now, this Packers defense has been really good this season. Their pass defense, Jeff Hafley, who steps in as their defensive coordinator, he's done a fantastic job. And the thing that you'll notice about the Packers very quickly, especially in the front seven, especially if a guy like Quay Walker is playing this weekend, which it seems like he will, but that front seven has a lot of depth. There's a lot of rotation from the edge defender position to the interior defensive line, from Rashawn Gary, now Lucas Van Ness kind of bursting onto the scene, Preston Smith, who does most of his work against the run, and then on the interior, where you typically look at Kenny Clark and you look at Slayton, Carl Brooks, who will step inside, and he's made a lot of big plays. You now had Devontae Wyatt, who's one of their depth pieces, and also Colby Wooden, who's gotten a lot of snaps so far this year. They have a ton of depth on that defensive line. And then at linebacker, we've seen kind of a mixed bag of players. They're a little bit young there, but they're very athletic at that spot now with Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker, who should be playing this game, Isaiah McDuffie, and they have some nice depth there as well. And then even in the back end, we could see some rotationalism there as well. But the biggest thing about their back end, just as a quick overview, especially in zone coverage, that's always stood out to me, and we saw it the first time we played Green Bay last season. We beat them pretty handily at their house to get things started, but the very first play, if you remember, offensively was an interception for Jared Goff, and what was it? It was cover 3 defensively, and again, it's a different defensive coordinator, but the key thing remains, which is overlapping zone coverage, right? Not just dropping 2 spots. Even though it's a spot dropping coverage, they're still overlapping their zones, they're reading quarterback's eyes, and even though you think you got a guy to pull the flat defender out, Goff throws it maybe a little bit late, and it gets picked off over the middle of the field. That is what this secondary has always been, is very smart players in the back end. That's always the takeaway. And now you just add McKinney to the mix, which makes him even better in the back end at taking the football away.
Couple of good examples. First off here, cover 1, notice Xavier McKinney. He's going to follow the beneath from the tight end here, but the tight end stays in the pass pro. When he does, and the offense tries to play this play action shot, which on paper should be available, this deep over route should be open, but McKinney drops out into coverage as his tight end stays to pass protect rather than squeezing up on the line of scrimmage. He's in the way, there's no throw. Then here you see one of the different ways that they can play the bunch. Now here they're going to go lock man, so they're just going to lock on to who their man is. They're not going to play inside, outside. They're just locking their man across the board. And you can see Evan Williams, who's not going to play, really good coverage here on this pass. That being said, though, you can find your matchup safeties, backers, and you can get a little bit of, okay, I know who's in man by the motion, but you still see that there's different ways they can play the bunch. They communicate it through it well, unlike a team, say, the Ravens.
Pick and choose your spots there. We'll talk about how I expect the Lions to do it, but what I've seen specifically with Houston and Jacksonville rolling through their games, charting every play, is that early downs, they were typically leaning heavy run. And I think the Lions may take the exact opposite approach in this game. I could see that being the case. But let's start there first. Let's start with this run defense for the Packers, because this is a very aggressive front seven. They're very athletic at that linebacker position. They want to get downhill, as well as their defensive line wants to get upfield. And Carl Brooks, especially Kenny Clark, those are 2 guys that have been incredible penetrating defensive linemen that have gotten upfield, that have created negatives, that have spilled run plays. At the edge position, man, they got some stout pieces between Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, guys that can really sit down, Van Ness that can set the edge. Now, that being said, I think it's been a little bit hit and miss at times for a guy like Preston Smith. I would still be willing to take that matchup, and I really like our matchup with Penei Sewell versus any of those guys, though they definitely have the body type to set the edge. That is kind of the build for these guys up front. What do I like when you talk about running the football against this team? Well, first off, and we've seen this utilized this year recently, but the traps, the whams, this is the team to utilize those run plays against, where you're getting up to that second level, where you're putting blocks on those backers that I think could be a little bit hit and miss at getting off of blocks, but they love to get downhill. They scrape very fast. I love getting up to those guys immediately with traps and run plays, letting those defensive line do what they want to do, which is they want to get upfield. They want to shoot gaps. Let them get upfield, hit them with a wham block from a tight end or a trap block from an offensive lineman, and then shoot into the second level. That's how you can create explosive runs. I've seen that already this season. I love that being utilized, especially in plus territory or 2 deep safeties again in this game. Now, that being said, what is kind of the staple? Well, I think there's a couple ways to go about it. I was watching Houston. I was like, oh, they're trying some counter pulls. They're kind of leaning into that gap scheme, but counter runs. Maybe they're trying to slow down these backers. But then I realized that's kind of just Houston's offense this season, so that's not really maybe a game plan specific thing for Green Bay. However, I don't hate that strategy. I think gap scheme could be utilized a lot in this game. It would make some sense, mainly for the reason of down blocking these defensive linemen, creating seal blocks, pushing these guys off their spots, instead of playing into the athleticism game, which is where they want to get upfield and then create negatives. You down block these these guys, you create combos, and then you get up to the second level off of that. I don't think their linebackers handled the counter runs poorly. I think they actually do a pretty good job of being disciplined, especially on the backside, stepping down, filling lanes. I don't think they handle that poorly, and they could be tough in those spots, especially because it could set up so much play action off of pulling on offensive linemen out of it, really selling the run fake, and with their aggressiveness in that front seven, play action feels like it could definitely open up in this game. I think that's a spot you can have a lot of success, especially on early down. I think you have to utilize eye candy. However you want to create that fast motion pre-snap, utilizing jumbo package offensively, overloading one side of the offensive line. I think in this game you have to try to find ways to create eye candy for these backers. That seems to have the most success. We saw Trevor Lawrence run the ball into the end zone with some eye candy, even though Goff doesn't give that threat. With that split back usage, creating eye candy in the backfield is valuable against this team. Stretch runs in this game because, again, I do like the Lions' ability to go at these edge defenders. Even though they're pretty stout, I like that. I like getting away from the interior a little bit. I would say if you're going to lean into that zone rushing style, maybe utilize some split zone blocks, utilize the 6 offensive linemen to create that backside split zone block. That way you can sit in more of those outside zone spots. I think if you sit more pure outside zone, you're going B gap runs, I would go behind the right side of the offensive line. I'd utilize the athleticism of Graham Glasgow on the backside to not get cut off by guys like Kenny Clark and get shot into the backfield and create negative plays, and then run behind Kevin Zeitler, who doesn't move as well as those guys, but he's very good at point of attack, very good with entry angles, and you can set up and seal some blocks if you run behind Kevin Zeitler in those spots. So I would lean towards the right side of the offensive line, but then also you could create stretch runs out of that. I would look for pulling Penei Sewell at times where you pull him across the formation, let that guy kick, let that guy lead the way, move people off their spot. I think there's going to be some creativity in the way that they utilize those guys, but whether that's Kingsley, Van Ness, I like going at those players with Penei Sewell. It's just a battle of doing that behind a guy like Kevin Zeitler, but I think that he can create movement on those guys. So we could see a little bit more gap style in this game, but I think overall it's utilizing some eye candy, getting some movement, zone running plays. Maybe you kind of live into that behind the right side of the offensive line. That way you can have the backside, which is kind of handled a little bit better, I think, by Graham Glasgow. As I said, it was run heavy for Jacksonville and Houston on early downs. However, I think we may change that up a little bit. Also, keep in mind with so much of the rotation on the defensive line between guys like Colby Wooden, when those guys step in, that's where you really can find success, especially when they start to roll through this defensive line. They're good, they're deep, but that's where as the game rolls along, you want to be able to kind of lean into that.
And I bring this up later, but I think this is the type of player the Lions could absolutely use, and we've seen them use this before. And this is how you can get Jahmyr Gibbs involved. This little delay, but also kind of a counter setup with the right guard pulling. So you down block at the point of attack Kenny Clark. Rather than letting him get upfield, you just go right at him. You down block Kenny Clark, you pull the right guard, you delay, in this case it'd be Jahmyr Gibbs, and this is how you let him get up to the second level. Pulling, in this case, could be Penei Sewell, maybe it's Zeitler, maybe it's the opposite side, and instead you pull Graham, and then you let Zeitler kind of down block that. I like Sewell pulling in these spots, and that's how you get Gibbs downhill with these little delays, these little draws, because this linebacker room is so aggressive downhill, make them pause.
Would change it up. I would throw the ball in early downs against this defense. Number one, they utilize a lot more single high safety seemingly on first downs rather than second and third down, especially when you get to second, and especially if it's longer, you get a lot of diversity in how they play coverage, the two deep looks, the rolling safeties constantly. I would say because of that, I would like to simplify it, which means throwing the ball on first down. I think that's what the Lions may lean into. I think there's play action success to be had in this game. They're going to respect our run game. I would lean into that. If that's pulling offense linemen out of it, fine. I would lean into play action early downs, and I would lean into running the ball on later downs. I think that's the best way to kind of simplify all of the movement that they have defensively. Now, that being said, they still play fast, which is the biggest challenge for this team, that even on play action sets, they play fast. They'll overlap zone coverage. They're not just going to leave wide open voids and zones, but I think that's the best place to go at them, is when they're going to lean a little bit more single high, when they're going to lean a little more cover 1/cover 3 defensively to find your play action shot plays in that spot, rather than trying to find the consistent passing attack through second and third down where you get a little bit more movement. Now, speaking of that pass defense, as I said, a little bit base coverage, more single high safety. You'll get a mix of Tampa 2 and quarters looks as well, which is why I would lean on play action in those spots. You also get less blitzing. The team that does play cover 3 on first down more often, you have to keep in mind that this is also a team that when they play cover 3, they don't typically blitz out of it, but what they do is they constantly use simulated pressure. So maybe here comes the cornerback, they drop out an edge rusher. You'll constantly get simulated pressure out of those spots, which again, I think play action can kind of neutralize, because you're going to get moving offensive linemen, you're going to get the run fake. You're going to help your pass protection. That's why I'd lean into it on early downs. In those spots coverage-wise, overloading one side of the field is always useful. Overloading through motion, spacing offensively. I think the middle of the field is going to be open. We've seen teams, create big plays on screens, middle screens when they're in those cover 3 looks. In those single high looks, when you get some of your pure like one-on-one matchups, like where do you go with the football? Well, if Stokes is out there, I love going at that matchup. I really like the matchup with Nixon as well, especially when he's out wide. Now, not having Jamison stinks for this game, especially in their cover 1 looks, because like we saw last season, we were able to use the speed to just run away from guys. We saw it on the first third down where you just kind of used Jamo on a drag and just ran him away from everybody, and that worked. That may be Khalif Raymond in this game. I think this is a game where Allen Robinson sees the football. I just think it makes sense when they're sitting in these off coverage looks to get Allen Robinson on a speed out. Use him to his strength, which is route running, it's body control, it's creating separation in kind of the middle portion of the field. I think Allen Robinson, his first reception, maybe a second. I think Allen Robinson gets going a little bit, finds some traction in this game in the passing attack. Do like a lot of the matchups that we can create out wide. Even Jair, the biggest strength there, I think, is that you can run away from him in coverage. So if you can find Khalif into some of those matchups, that's the best place to find it, though he is their most consistent corner. The biggest thing you have to watch for there is their ability to make plays on the football and communicate in zone coverage, which is why I think you really want to try to simplify things by passing the ball on first down. So we get into more of these second down looks, and maybe you get to more of these Tampa 2s and these quarters looks and these cover 6 looks. Typically, you get aggressive safety play. Now, Evan Williams has done a great job in these spots out of these shell coverage looks. Not having Evan Williams and having Bullard in that spot, he is someone that the more often that you can put into the mix and you can single him up. We saw Jacksonville do it. More often you can single him up with the slot, or they want to blitz out of it, or you get him in a quarters look. That's a guy that you definitely want to go at in coverage. The weird thing about me with Bullard coming out of the draft was like he's very versatile. The issue was he never felt like a great matchup piece in man coverage. So anytime you get him one-on-one in a matchup, definitely utilize that to attack Bullard when he's at the safety position. It does not feel incredibly natural for him in that spot, especially when he's working against the receiver. That being said, though, I also like attacking backers in coverage here. This is a very fast unit that flows quickly to the football. It can be difficult to set up like play action boots and flats and just get it out there and catch and run. It can be difficult in those spots, but I think change of direction wise, there's some struggles. We see the versatility that they utilize to stack everybody on the line, show 7-man fronts, drop out, go Tampa 2. Here goes Edgerrin Cooper dropping to the seam. And they'll do things like that. And we've seen Jacksonville create some sex by going at it early, but they have that kind of speed where they can just run out and chase those routes. But if you make them change directions, you make them work stick concepts, you make them work with Laporta on an angle route or an option route or Gibbs, that's where I feel like you can go at these backers. I don't think they're fantastic at anticipating routes or change of direction, which Cooper wasn't in college either, but he definitely can flow one way quickly, and that's the problem that he can bring to the table. So you have to kind of play into that, especially out of those shell looks. I'd like to see the Lions at some point try to hit like a wheel route out of it. I think that's the spot where you could potentially pull a corner, hit a wheel route behind it, maybe hit a double move, especially when you get to the red zone. One of the little wrinkles that I like is the opportunity to potentially create like a leak touchdown, which is if you go back to when we played Arizona year 1, where St. Brown kind of like down blocked and he walked across the formation, then wheeled out opposite and he scored that touchdown. He was wide open. Something like that could be on the table. I think the aggressive safety play, you take advantage of it with a double move. If you remember last year when you played Green Bay, it wasn't a safety, but it was St. Brown who ran like the kind of hook, wrapped it around and worked back to the end zone. He ended up scoring a touchdown. You could take advantage, especially in plus territory, of that kind of look. I think a wheel route could be on the table. Some sort of double move with a guy like Javon Bullard where you kind of work it down and break back upfield. Something along those lines could find some success in this game to find a way to create your shot. The problem is the thing that they do well is they really do a nice job of covering the dagger concept, which they do with their backer position. They carry those things vertically. They do a nice job of kind of taking those out of the play between their safety position as well. So you really have to find a way to create layers out of it. Get to more of their cover 1 looks where they're straight and man coverage. Again, Bullard should be attacked. It's a reason I think Laporta's in for a very big game. He's one of the guys when you ask like who's going to step up, Laporta's in the spot to do that. Jair you can run away from. I think Nixon in some of those packages where he steps out wide, he's a guy that you can work on when they go nickel and he has to step into the slot. That matchup with Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's absolutely a matchup I love. I love most matchups with St. Brown, but I like it against Nixon, of course. Nixon could stick with guys. I don't love him at the catch point, however, and because of that, I think St. Brown could rack up a ton of receptions in those spots. This is a team that on third down will lean into more of those cover 1 looks. It's kind of like their go-to coverage is some version of cover 1, whether that's cover 1 robber, cover 1 rat, which is man coverage, single eye safety.
And this is why they're tough because, again, the communication is typically on point. Here's another way they can play the bunch. They're going to play inside, outside at the top of your screen here. So watch them sort this out by the release types inside, outside. They're going to pass these off. They're not going to lose leverage. Now, again, run away from Jair with some speed. Find your one-on-ones with Allen Robinson on a quick out route for straight route running. That's where Laporta can just overpower a safety or linebacker. And then here against another bunch, you're getting your point man. So you're going to have your point man on the press, on the ball. And then outside of that, they're going to sort. So they point man and then they sort inside outside. So again, they have multiple different ways that they can play the bunch, and they're all on the same page.
That's their go-to typically on third down. The challenge that they present isn't always blitzing. They'll have occasional blitzes, some rare blitzes out of that, but it's more so the stunts that they're great with their defensive front. A very athletic defensive line. They will bring Cooper. They'll simulate pressure out of it, but it is the stunts that they create up front, which is the biggest challenge. Our offensive line is going to be stressed constantly. If you remember, we lost to Green Bay the last season on Thanksgiving. It was the interior offensive line that had a really rough day between Graham and Jonah. This year, it's going to be about Kevin Zeitler. He's one of the new additions for this reason, in my opinion. And now Graham at the left side. That is why he's here. He's here to help us against a team like this because it cooked us last season. The interior of that offensive line have to be on point, specifically in pass protection, specifically in third down looks, because of the amount of stunts that they're going to have us front, especially because Goff is dealing with that little ankle. Definitely have to be on their game in this one. I think the running back is also going to be key to step in for pass protection as well. The challenge that Green Bay does present, and one of the biggest reasons I think their defense coordinator has done such a good job, is in these third down spots. While it's usually a mix between cover one and occasionally like a Tampa 2 drop out of it, he also has a knack for occasionally just breaking a tendency, giving you something and then giving you something completely different. We saw it against Jacksonville. He rolled into a cover 3. He'll break a tendency occasionally in those spots. So he has a thing that he likes to get to, but occasionally he'll break it with something completely off track. You're like, what the heck is that? And you don't have the right play called for it. So that's where he can be tricky. Of course, the more third down and longs that we can avoid, the better it's going to be.
And this is one of those spots, because of their willingness to go Tampa 2, say on 3rd and 5, and not just 3rd and 14, it can be difficult to get to tell exactly what that coverage is going to be. We love cover 1 as well on 3rd down. We'll do Tampa 2 when it's 3rd and long, but usually not 3rd and short. So that wrinkle makes it difficult. So either one, you have to have a couple looks for just going out there on 3rd down, or number 2, again, the hard count has to be very used, as well as motion pre-snap, to then just try to maybe get some indicators like, hey, look how the cornerback's playing here at the bottom of the screen. He's inside leverage. He's playing off. They're going to invert this. That cornerback's willing to go to safety. So this might be Tampa 2 and not cover 0 like they're showing here pre-snap. And maybe you can use some of those indicators. Like, we're probably not getting cover 0 because they don't do that a ton. It's rare. They don't do that a ton. So maybe it's more of a zone coverage look here rather than a straight man look, because the single high safety, he would have to roll to the middle, and then you'd have to have that corner step down and squeeze it to the inside. That may not make a ton of sense. So you just have to maybe find those little details or have a couple answers for both.
Second down, more of those medium spots. Again, you're going to get more of the 2 deep looks, whether that's a mix of Tampa 2 and 2nd and medium. 2nd and 7, that kind of range, you'll get more of those cover 6 looks, and that's where you have to create those high lows, smash concepts, corner hitch, that kind of thing, working in the middle of the field, high lows between these backers, create kind of those spacings underneath. When you get in the 2nd and much longer, again, you get more to those single high coverages, but that's also where diversity kind of comes into play. But that's where you get cover 1, that's where you get man, that's where you get cover 0 occasionally. It's just a lot more diverse. And then on 3rd down, as I said, it's usually a mix between some version of cover 1 with a rare blitz or a Tampa 2 look. That the problem there is that they'll show it as man and they'll invert a Tampa 2 out of it, or they'll just drop into a Tampa 2 coverage out of it. Now, we saw Jacksonville try to work that, because as we saw when Jacksonville was in a spot where they had to go score and they had to throw the football, and Green Bay knew it, they'd stack the line of scrimmage. So Jacksonville worked off of that by saying, hey, we're going to hit this seam before Edgerrin Cooper can even turn around, because we know that he's dropping out. So again, they have a tendency of a couple coverage they want to get to, so you have to find beaters for both of those. It's just a tricky part of that is finding the actual window that you feel like you can attack. And to me, a lot of times that's going to be Sam Laporta in this game. We saw Jacksonville find advantage of that, but also because of how they play it, they'll kind of mix their Tampa 2 and cover 4 looks, where they do a nice job, especially in obvious passing downs, of not letting you get behind the corners. They rarely give up kind of that breadbasket shot between cornerback and safety. That's not really ever an option, so they'll give you the flats in those spots. They do a great job of taking away the vertical push on the outside, and they kind of funnel you back towards the middle of the field. So again, when I get to the red zone, I like to see elite play. I like to see lines throwing the ball on 1st down in this game. I think that's the spot to do it. And then leaning on the run game with a little bit of eye candy, a little bit of creativity. I think passing the football, I think we have a lot of matchups. I think Laporta will be the guy that has to step up, but I also think St. Brown will rack up a huge game. It just makes a ton of sense because of the matchup he's going to see. And then also, I think Allen Robinson finds some footing in this game. I think this is the first time we see him to get rolling, but I'll be curious to see if they try to use Khalif in some of the role that they would typically use a guy like Jameson for. Now, when he flips flip it to the other side, you look at the Packers offensively, who we're assuming Jordan Love's going to play because he's likely to play. Let's just say it as he's going to play. Let's start with that run game, because without having Myers, that definitely shakes things up. I thought the strength of this offensive line was more towards the left side of their offensive line, behind Elton Jenkins, Rasheed Walker, and Myers at center. But now, without that being the case, and you step Morgan in potentially at left guard, I don't know that that's the strength necessarily of this offensive line. They're a little bit more balanced. But when you talk about this running game as a whole, Josh Jacobs, who's questionable, but it sounds like he's going to go. Wilson would be kind of the next guy up. Josh Jacobs, very talented running back. Some of the better contact balance, constantly falls forward. He feels like Jamal in some spots where it's just like it's hard to get that guy to go backwards. That being said, though, what I do also notice with Josh is you can absolutely stop runs before they even get going. So he's one of these guys that can turn 5 into 10 easily like that. He's got really good vision, but he's also another player that really can get kind of shut down before the run play even has a chance to take off. And that's where I think the Lions have to be at it, is they can create really short runs. We've seen multiple teams now do it. Challenge with their run game is their eye candy that they utilize. They have constant eye candy in the backfield. Now, for them, the benefit is they utilize this to run the ball a ton. The receivers get involved in the run game a lot. Obviously, Watson has the ability. We saw him on the reverse. I think it was against Jacksonville. Jaden Reed is typically the guy that gets involved there. They'll have a little end-around sweep that they'll give to him. They'll have jet fakes out of it. They have that eye candy, but they also give the handoff. Now, that's where the edge rushers come into play. They have to be great at getting upfield, spilling those, allowing linebackers to scrape. That's how I'm looking at it. I think those guys have to be able to get vertical, not get caught flat-footed, not be late where one of these plays can hit us around the corner and just turn the corner on us. We have to spill these back before we can scrape to the outside. Those guys, and I think it's okay because we can lean on the athleticism of guys to just get upfield and have their eyes open. Man, you have to be prepared for that backside. Here comes the jet across from the opposite side. Now, that being said, though, what they also use this eye candy for is not just to confuse guys, but it's to lighten the box, especially in zone coverage. They do a great job of putting your defensive back in the box where he doesn't want to deal with that offensive lineman, or just shifting the box and shifting the strength and then working off of that. They do that incredibly well. They even had a play where they used Josh Jacobs. They put him at receiver, brought him in quickly, snapped it as he got in there, and they were able to create a run lane out of it. They use eye candy constantly. They want to slow the backside scrape of backers, and they also want to shift the strength. So defensive backs that get stepped in to stop the run, they have to be great. The right side is, I think our defensive backs are really good against the run, and they're going to be testing this game from cornerbacks against the wide receiver runs to safety stepping in the box to giving us run support. I think they're great there, and this is the game where they're going to be tested to be that. That being said, though, quick side note, it's more towards the passing attack. With all of the receiver screens, the bubble screens, the fast motion, just kind of check it out. It's like an extension of the run game. Our defensive backs have to dominate the matchup against their receivers when they're trying to block. They have to be great. Carlton, Terrion, Amik, these guys have to blow these plays up. They cannot get it blocked left and right. They're not the best blockers, okay? They'll have good moments. We cannot be getting dominated against the receivers blocking. That's a place where I circle and say we have to dominate that matchup and just kind of get them out of that. Just a pure run blocking offensive line, which is why the eye candy is so beneficial, which is why they use extensions of the run to try to get out wide, which is why all of this movement and the receivers getting involved is so necessary, because the run game on its own is not just pure dominate. It's not just going to move people off the ball. Our interior defense line, of course, should be really good, but I need those edge defenders to step up in this game. I think Rasheed Walker has had some struggles this season. Obviously, Zach Thomas is not the biggest people mover either. Their run game kind of leans into more of that zone style. The outside zone is seemingly what they lean into behind the left side of the offensive line typically when they go outside zone. That's where I think we have to dominate Rasheed Walker at the point of attack. We just have to. We have to win that matchup. Whoever sees him, Trevor Nowask, whoever sees him, we have to dominate that matchup with Rasheed Walker. They find success typically through the cutback, which is where their offensive line does thrive, which is athleticism. Again, they're not fantastic at the point of attack. I think they put pretty poor combo blocks at times where they don't really move people, even though they'll lean into kind of that duo run, which we'll talk about. However, the problem that they create is the backside of these zone runs. Because of the athleticism, they make it difficult to cut off blocks. They utilize motion to try to pull your backside backer to scrape over top. So your backside defense tackle, to me, is actually going to be the guy stressed rather than the play side the most in this game. That backside player has to be able to get back over top, has to be able to be there for the cutback where a lane can't be massive, and then Josh Jacobs gets downhill. Once he gets downhill, he's a problem. They'll also lean into kind of the stretch runs as well, and typically they go outside zone left, stretch run right, though that could be a little more balanced with the injuries. And then the dual run plays. This is usually when they're in some of the tougher positions. They're backed up on their own goal line, or they're trying to get into the end zone. They'll go heavy dual runs, so run behind that right side of the offensive line, which was typically, that was typically behind Ryan, and then, the center Myers. Then on the backside, Jacobs would handle a one-on-one. Jacobs could handle a one-on-one, but the dual run plays will come into play. I just think with their guard position and where it's at, if Jacobs does kick the center, we should handle those matchups. We absolutely should. The positive for their offense, they have variety. They can go zone, they can go duo. But the Lions should handle those matchups one-on-one between their interior defensive linemen. And then you'll find your mix of the outside runs. A lot of things are sideline to sideline. That's just kind of how they play it. Stretch run, outside zone, toss, pin, pull looks as well, which again, edge defenders spill those things, and then counter pull runs as well. You get the occasional just straight power runs, but counter pull runs as well. I don't think they create great combo blocks, so we should have a lot of success between our interior defensive linemen. I think winning those matchups in this game. The key is just going to be tackling in space because, again, Josh Jacobs is constantly falling forward. Pass the ball specifically. What I expect from the Lions in this one is probably a lot of single high coverage. Now, I'm not completely sure on that because we saw a team like Houston, a lot of two deep safeties, a lot of quarters looks. They weren't going to give up the big play. They were trying to keep everything in front of them, and they had a lot of success, I would say. They kind of made the Packers work long drives, and then ultimately with how many interceptions that Love has, which is 9, you kind of play into the fact that he might just give us one if we make this drive too long. Because that's the thing about Love, right? We all know he's a big playmaker. He's going to take shots down the field. He'll make some decisions where you're like, that doesn't make much sense there. Sometimes it works out great. Sometimes you're like, that was awful. Even the play where they won and they walked off on the field goal last week where he took a shot to the end zone. You're like, why would you even take that shot to the end zone? That's just unnecessary. That's where Jordan Love thrives. So Houston felt like they were like, hey, keep it in front of us. Don't give up the big play. Make him work long drives. Lions could play into that. Wouldn't surprise me. But then there's also the flip side balance, which is where it's a lot more single high, where you're trying to lean into stop the run, single high safety, one-on-one matchups on the outside. And I tend to believe that at least on early downs, the Lions will live a little bit more in single high coverage. Number one, he makes questionable decisions when he's disguised and or blitzed, and he's kind of hurried up off the plate. In second kind of combo read, you can make some shaky decisions. So whether that's through simulated pressure, drop out edge. Oh, this first guy's not there. Let me get away from that. Or you're bringing a blitz, so you overload one side, and he's like, okay, let me try to go here. And then he's kind of forced, do I go there? Do I not go there? Then you can get some, tough decisions there. And then again, you can disguise it. So you show something like a lot of teams were doing a good job on third down of playing like a man coverage, but then at the snap, they would blitz it. And instead of going like cover 1 blitz, where it's just straight man, they'd go like cover 3 blitz. So now they would take who got into the area. So it wouldn't open up as Jordan Love maybe thought it would. And then he'd be late to find the next read. I want to see these guys be aggressive in off man coverage. I want to see the eye balance. I want to see the ball hawking of Carlton. I think Terrion's in a spot to go get his first pick this weekend. I just don't see why not. I think he's a guy that has a great opportunity to do so because that off man eye balance can be there. Read quarterback, read man, break on the deep out, break on the deep curl, break on these routes that don't hit double moves that often. No, with Jordan Love, he will throw off his back foot. He'll throw some late throws. You're like, that probably wasn't the best decision. It's an opportunity to go get one as a corner. You get in trouble, but it could. Now, I would expect that they're going to go at Amik Robertson a ton in this game. Dobbs is a lot of times he'll roll in the slot, and Dobbs is their guy against man-to-man coverage. He's their one-on-one beater. So I think Amik Robertson's probably going to see a lot of that matchup, which I would assume Amik's going to be in the mix a ton in this game. Amik Robertson is another of those guys. You talk about players to watch. It has to be great. I think Amik Robertson is absolutely on the table for that. I think he's going to be thrown into the mix a lot. If you look at the Lions back end, if I'm another team, try and go at Terrion, but I got younger receivers too. I'm probably going to try to go at Amik. But the real reason I say I think we'll see a lot of single eye safety is that when this offense goes single back, we'll see if they do because of the injury. They may go pistol and things like that. But when they go under center, they do a lot of play action. They don't do a lot of straight drops, 3-step drop, get the ball out of their hands. They're going to do shot plays out of that. So for me, I like the Lions in those spots to bring the blitz. I like cover 1 blitzing. I like playing man across the board. Obviously, you're going to get these long developing routes. And the thing that they do best, which is why I think you have to wrinkle between cover 1, cover 3, even on early downs, is that what they do best is they do a nice job of kind of pulling your safety out of the play. So they'll create pure man matchups where they'll be like, I'll run a deep curl, but we'll run them on both sides. So now your safety has to pick a spot and he kind of stands in the middle. He's in no man's land. Or we'll go high-low on the safety. Now he's in no man's land. They do a nice job of that, or deep out routes. Now he's not helping anybody. They do a nice job of playing away from your safety. But that's where the blitz attached should add some value because I don't think their running backs do a great job in pass protection. That's where that should add some value, especially with the injuries of bringing an extra rusher, hopefully speeding up that process where our guys are not only winning on the outside, but you're also getting the ball to that first guy open or not. When they're kind of backed up into more long distance situations, that's where you're going to get more of your vertical shot plays. But what they typically do is they'll play half the field. They'll run like 2 vertical shots. So maybe it's double post, maybe it's just 2 verts. And they're going to try to put you in a spot where you have to pick one or the other. We saw the Tampa 2 touchdown they had against Jacksonville where he got behind the corner and Jordan Love threw a beautiful pass. Then on the opposite side, they'll run kind of the shorter concept where it's like a hitch and then it's a corner route, right? They'll have kind of the little 2-man concept on the opposite side where he he could choose between the two. So you just have to be aware of that. They get backed up. They're probably going to have some sort of vertical shot on one side of the field with two guys involved. So you have to be prepared for that, which is, again, probably why Houston was like, hey, we're going to play quarters because we don't want to get beat by a guy being in having to play two guys and we give it the big shot play and we fall behind. That's not the game we want to play against Green Bay because that's where their offense thrives rather than making them work methodically. I think it's second and longer, I would absolutely do that. But again, on first down, I think we're going to go a little bit more single high. Speaking of, when you go to more of those cover one looks, that's where the slot gets very involved. As I talked about, those deep over routes, that's going to be Dobbs going to be involved. One-on-one matchup guy is going to be Romeo Dobbs in those spots. We'll also use Wicks. Wicks is a little bit more of your guy that's going to win towards the side a little bit more. Dobbs is kind of your one-on-one everywhere, and then Watson's more of your vertical threat. That's where he's going to win. I'm sure Watson's going to see a lot of Carlton in this game. If you're going second and long, and the defense is going to play too deep or they want to protect against the vert. So like I said, they'll have like the verticals and then they'll run like a two-man concept where it's like a slant flat or like a curl flat. And they'll run those little two-man concepts just because Love's hands fast. That's where he'll exploit that because he won't test the 2x2, but instead he'll just go to the underneath shot. He'll find the spacing in the underneath zone coverage, which is again where the occasional simulated look of like, oh, edge drops out. And if you get it into the right spot where the edge drops out into that spot and he doesn't have that and you race to take away the flat, then he's forced to go somewhere else. He might make a bad decision. That's where the little wrinkles of like dropping out of defensive lineman occasionally could actually find some value if you get him to drop into the right spot in the right spot.
And I think another interesting way to disguise against this team, we used to do this against Chicago, even more so than just saying I'm showing this zone, but I'm going to go to this zone, is potentially some combination coverage where one side of the field, maybe it is more of a cover three, but the opposite side is more of a man coverage call, right? So maybe towards the boundary, we're playing straight man coverage and press man in that spot, but we're playing half and half because of how many fields feel like half field, half field. We're getting two different looks on each side. I could see some combination coverage also being a difference because you see it cover three, cover four. You see the quickness to get the ball to his hands on these quick passing concepts.
This is also why single high, bring a blitz, potentially creating one negative could get you in a spot to do something like that, in my opinion. That way you can play the two deep look on second and down. That's how I would kind of lean into that. And it's the same thing on third and short. You'll either typically get a run or you'll get one of those underneath concepts, slant flat concept, one of those things where they'll kind of run a little two-man look, a little two-man combination underneath. You get more of the medium spots. That's where they love to live in those dagger concepts. They are one of the highest dagger concept use team in the league, in my opinion, from what I've seen, where again, it's a vertical through the seam, it's a deep dig route, and then underneath they'll usually have a third man combo to that where they'll run like a little hitch to try to pull the underneath defender. We do this a ton as well, but they run so many dagger concepts offensively. If there's like one concept they got to stop that, it's that, because a slap flat, that'll give you 5 to 10 yards. That will give you the chunks. That's where they do it. And we saw against Minnesota where they had that early pick. It's because the linebacker passed the seam and sat down on the dagger because they just kept running it over and over and over. It's like, this makes sense. Hey, they're playing quarters, so let's run a dagger concept. You're like, that makes sense. And some of that's probably just what the other team is doing. Dude, they're playing quarters, run a dagger. Great. But if that linebacker passes that and finds the dagger, you're right there to pick it off. And that's where the linebackers in those backed up situations have to find depth. That's where they have to find depth. That's what Minnesota did well. That's what other teams have done well. You have to find depth. And again, that comes more so from getting them behind the chains more than anything, where they're trying to open up kind of these daggered concepts. And then in long spots, they're going to go high-low answers. That's usually what they're going to find there. What I like in those third down situations, again, is switching assignments, whether that's through simulated pressure, whether that's through a disguise of like, hey, we're showing man, but we're going to go into actually a cover 3 blitz. So now we're kind of passing off the responsibilities as they hit our area, so we can kind of switch our assignments and we can really slow down the timing of your play. You look at it on second down and medium, you're going to get more of that quick passing attack. So back to that timing, which again is to me just kind of get those yards back. And then when it's second and long, they're going to play a little bit more of those sticks in those spots, which to me, second and long, you can play some of those quarters looks. They're going to play the sticks, drive on the route. But second and medium, those are the opportunities for, to me, potentially the Lions to say, okay, this is why we got the personnel that we did. So we can play press man, so we can disrupt timing, so we just don't give you these easy concepts. We want to disrupt timing. We want to slow down the ball getting out of your hands. That way it's not as easy, and it's not back foot, kind of just flipping in there to a tight window. Again, I said this during the week on LNU and on Believe, is that I feel like a lot of what the Lions have brought in personnel-wise is for this Packers team. And I believe that because press man guys throw off timing. And last time we played Green Bay in that loss, Jordan Love was about 50% completion percentage against man. It was a lot of tight window throws. Against zone, he was almost perfect against us in the entire first half. We just didn't have the personnel to live in man, and we got beat a couple times. We may not win every time. We won't win every time. I'll tell you right now. Meek's going to get beat. Carlton will get beat. Terran will get beat. Invest in that in that personnel to throw off timing, to make plays at the catch point, and make Love beat you with tight window throws where he's throwing back foot, or that first read is not fantastic. That's where that press man coverage, the personnel that you specifically got to beat this team, has to come into play. That's where I'm looking at that. Now, in terms of just players to watch in those spots, the quick passing attack, Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs. Obviously, Josh on screens, what he does after the catch, but also Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft has exploded this year. He's huge in the red zone. He's huge after the catch on flat concepts because he's very tough to bring down. You guys know I love Tucker Kraft coming out of the draft. If you were around back then, I love me some Tucker Kraft. So he has become like such a massive part of this team. And again, on second and long, if you're going those quarters looks, that's where you have to wrap up tackling in space. Say it again. Not only gets run, it's also gets a pass. Still Josh Jacobs, and now the tight ends. Tucker Kraft specifically, second and long, teams go back. He's going to get the ball underneath. He's going to do things after the catch. You have to be really good against that guy. And typically, we'll probably see second and medium more than second and long because they'll probably have a few positive yards on first down, which is going to be more of an opportunity to press, disrupt timing, rather than going to be second and 13 constantly. Hopefully it is, where we're kind of backed up. I'm just assuming playing the odds there that we won't see that situation as often. When you talk about kind of their pass front, I think Rasheed Walker's been super shaky. I don't know that we have the guy to beat him up in pass pro this year. That's what stinks. If we had Hutchinson, I would love this. I don't think that we maybe do, but that's where Muhammad's going to have to go to work. Levi, give us a few wins on Walker. I think he's looked very shaky so far this season. I think it's difficult to run stunts against a guy like Zach Tom on the right side. So if I'm doing that, I'm doing it to the left where the rookie's going to be and where Rasheed Walker is, not as much to the right side because Tom is very smart. He's played really well over there. We'll still have Sean Ryan who understands it. Those guys do a nice job against stunts. I'd go at that left side, not as much so the right side. Again, the wrinkle that I would like to see defensively, one of them is for the Lions, especially on those second and long looks, to occasionally try to like show quarters, show four deep, and then at the snap roll out of it, right? To Sky, hey, we're going quarters. At the snap, we're going hard flats, hit the cover two. We're going Tampa 2, linebacker takes seam, take away the dagger, but watch for that in route. And then I want my quarterbacks to drive down. That way they can take away one of those quick outside throws.
And like on this play, you're going to see they're going to bring a slot corner blitz and the safety's going to step down, but you see how fast Love reads it. And this is why and I'll talk about this, reminds me of Dak through his drop back process with his reads, but this is also where combination coverage, that's the other wrinkle I want to see. Man zone looks, flip it on both sides. That way you don't have to give up a gaping hole like this, but you're just playing a mixed coverage. So if he doesn't pick the right side or he doesn't have the right combination for the right side, it could force him to hold onto the football just a little bit longer than he wants to.
One of the things that he reminds me of is Dak Prescott in the sense that his progressions look like Dak, right? It's very similar to he's working through his reads as he's taking his 3 steps back. That way when he hits that back foot, his ball's going to rip out of his hands. He's very similar to Dak in that sense to me when he rolls in through his progressions. So throwing off timing is everything. So whether that's a disguise, because I think that can give Love some problems where he holds the ball a little bit to work timing, that works, or press and timing, that works. Throw off timing somehow, I think that's a way to do it, especially if you get them backed up. But he reminds me a lot of Dak and how he gets through his progressions and how the ball gets out of his hands so fast. It just kind of looks very similar. And then in the goal line situations, running back screens. Watch for screens. They want to throw screens to spot. They want to extend the run game rather than just live through the run. So for me overall, man, this is going to be a heavyweight battle. I'm excited because I think a lot of what the Lions have added is for this team, for this game, and is to beat this team. So overall, final predictions here. Who's going to step up on offense catching the football? To me, it's going to be Laporta and Saint are going to eat, but I think we're going to see Allen Robinson get in the mix a little bit in this game. I also think defensively, we need our edge rushers to really step up against the run in this game. That's kind of what I'm leaning on this game. These guys, whoever pops in that category, how well those guys do, could decide the game for the Lions defensively. I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring. I think the rain plays a factor in this game. We could see teams try to run the ball a little bit more. So as a little side note, but it was kind of put on the forefront in the last game against the Titans, the Green Bay Packers special teams has been below average all season long. The Lions have had a top special teams unit all season long. In a rainy game, that feels like it could absolutely play a part in this. We usually don't talk about that. Opponents of the Green Bay Packers have been playing with much better field position. That could absolutely come into play in this game. We have a new kicker for the Green Bay Packers that has done his job recently, but if he's put out there to make some field goals, absolutely could be a problem. Hopefully that is the case, that the Lions special teams unit could also be an X factor into this game that just shifts the tide of this one, and one that I think could be a little bit ugly offensively. It could hurt the downfield passing attack, could lead to some turnovers. I think Terrion gets a pick in this game. I think this is the game to go do it. I just think that this is going to be a little bit sloppy. I think it's going to be a little bit sloppy. You got two good teams. It's going to be a little bit sloppy where some decisions might be shaky. I think both teams will turn the football over. I'm going to go 24-17 Lions win a sloppy football game on the road. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.